Okay, welcome everyone to Transportation, Highways and Military Affairs today. Our first order of business, roll call is our first order of business, yeah.
Senator Anderson,
Here.
Senator Brennan,
Excused.
Senator Cooper,
Here.
Senator Kolb,
Present.
Chairman Pappas.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our first order of business is a bill we were going to consider last week, but we'll do it today. Senator Boner, this is Senate File 119, expedited professional licensures for military members. Please talk about your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and apologies to the committee for missing on last Tuesday. I was presenting another bill in a different committee, and I thought that this one was up today, and it turns out it is. So yeah, thanks for your indulgence, and yeah, we'll get going here. Mr. Chairman, Senate File 119 deals with the problem I think that we're all pretty well aware of, that when you have military families moving from base to base, and especially here in our capital city, it can be difficult if their spouse is a professional that requires licensure. And some of the feedback I've heard is that it may take up to 6 months or even longer to get a license through some of these licensing boards. And the good mayor is here, he can give you more details. But if you're doing as short of a tour as 2 years sometimes at a place like Warren Air Force Base, that makes it very difficult for your family to find work. And so what this bill does is it builds off of previous work that this legislature has done, that where I think in 2021 we said you should expedite licensure for military members or those associated with the military. But that just doesn't seem to have happened. And I guess you look through the statute, we weren't very specific as to what we expected when it came to expedited licensure. So this bill is a result of some of those concerns, but also recognizing that there's been some changes at the federal level that require licensing boards to approve some form of a license to allow an individual to practice within 30 days, assuming that they already have a license in another jurisdiction. So that's the idea behind the bill. We can go through it, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay.
Please do.
So you see, we have a definition of who qualifies during the applicant's a military service member or a spouse. And furthermore, the person who is released from military service within 2 years and is honorably discharged. The definition of military service is a broader definition, not just our armed forces you think of, but also things like NOAA, uniformed services. I think there's some health services in there. So what I would describe as civilian, but also our kind of broader category of uniformed services. That's consistent with the current statute. I don't have a strong opinion about that one way or the other, but we thought it'd be best just to remain consistent there, Mr. Chairman. So an important decision point there, whether you want to be that broad definition of military service or the more narrow definition of what we usually think of, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Space Force, and their corresponding reserves. Okay, so bottom page 2, you see the specific requirement for a 30-day time frame. I think this is important. Like I said, there's clearly a lack of specificity as when we passed the previous bill. So we need to say what we mean. And once again, that is now a federal requirement. So I think there's value in communicating that to our boards and statute. Page 3, we have additional requirements saying you have to provide a military ID card, the spouse's ID card, or a marriage license to prove that you are who you say you are and you qualify for this program, and then a copy of military orders showing that you are going to be moving to our state. So we require rulemaking in this case. Once again, there's a federal standard that we need to take into account. And then page 4, we have a requirement for online applications. On to page 5, we have some more detail as to what qualifies as educational and training requirements. And that includes their military training in the instance of an active duty member or somebody who is recently separated from active duty. And then just more specifications there. On page 5, also, in line 18, it got a good correction from our military department. There's a technical error, 3326-110. That should be 36, that's a typo. So instead of 26 in both, this is on line 18, it should be 36. So good catch by our military department there. Then we repeal similar provisions for, the repealer is for similar provisions for service members. So currently we have, two areas of statute. One is for active duty personnel, another one's for the spouses. And as you can see on page 2, we're just combining everybody in the same program. So that's why the repealers are. So July 1st, 2025 effective date, Mr. Chairman, and I'll stand for questions.
I do have a question on page 2. Why are we expanding the definition of a military service member as a person who has been released within 2 years? I mean, they're no longer a service member after that. What's the thinking there?
Just thought we'd recognize their active duty experience and make so that, it seems to me that it doesn't make much sense to say that, okay, you're practicing in Wyoming in the military capacity, but you cross that over in the civilian world and all of a sudden your experience and your qualifications don't matter. Or at least not through the licensing board. So I think, that's a policy decision for the committee, but I thought it was appropriate to add that provision for folks who are separating from the military.
So what I'm thinking is you're trying to fix is that if someone separates, say they're stationed somewhere else, and they separate, but they move back to Wyoming, so then if they've separated within the 2 years, their spouse can immediately get the ability to practice within 30 days too. Is that what you're trying
Right,
to get
yeah,
at?
we're dealing with people transitioning out of the military. If we're recognizing, their experience, if they're moving from out of state into state and they're still on active orders, we thought we'd extend the same policy to folks who are moving, but also as a part of, separating from the military. So nothing magic about that 2-year time frame, but I thought that was appropriate. So.
Okay. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, so this wouldn't apply to a person that's here at F.E. Warren and the spouse wants to be licensed? They wouldn't get the same treatment as somebody that was out of the military?
No, Mr. Chairman, it'd be the same treatment, same policy for all those circumstances.
Okay.
Up to 2 years.
Up to 2 years, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, on the page 1 there on line 4, you're saying it's providing for temporary practice permits, but actually it's the permit itself, isn't it? Why are we saying temporary there?
Oh, goodness.
Line 4.
Right, that's a reference to page 5, line 4. So you can issue a license or a temporary permit. That's consistent with the federal law. They can be authorized a temporary ability to practice their job and then have a more thorough examination, so that they get to work, recognizing that they've already been licensed in a different state. But then that doesn't preclude the board in question from going back and going through their regular procedures, if you will.
Okay.
I think it's allowing for a work permit without granting a full license until all of the boxes are checked.
Right.
And then
Yes,
a
Mr. Chairman.
full license can be granted.
Good.
Okay. Committee, any further questions? Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Boner says shall issue a license or temporary permit within 30 days of receiving the application. What happens if the board doesn't meet during that 30 days? I mean, they're going to have to have a special meeting then? Is that what do you envision would happen? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Boner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, that's why we require rulemaking of all the boards. They have some ability to either for staff to recognize if they have staff that this has already occurred. They've already been licensed in other states, or set up some sort of procedure that grants that licensure if they check a certain amount of boxes. So it's going to affect all of our boards, I imagine that the exact details will be determined by how each board wants to react to that.
Senator Cole?
Yeah, just, so do you know the frequency of meetings of these boards? I mean, are they all different? I don't know. I just wondered if you knew. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I've sat on professional boards, and yes, they're all different. Our board met twice a year, the architects board. And so I think through the process of rulemaking, on our board, we had plenty of directives that allow our staff to work and continue to do things. We have something similar to this in architecture. It's a reciprocity rather than a temporary work permit. And so, yes, many times the staff will take care of it as long as there's a procedure set up.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I've served on 2 of these boards, and they don't meet that frequently, but the staff is set up to do the things they need to do, and this would be one of them, that's for sure.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not saying I would have done things differently if it weren't for the federal requirement, but that requirement is out there nevertheless.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. We'll open it up. First, let me ask if any of the agencies, cities, or the department, well, why don't we have the department first, the military department, since this is a military bill. Let's hear from them, and then we'll hear from the good city of Cheyenne. Welcome, Colonel Hinkle.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Karen Hinkle. I am the Senior Legal Counsel for the Wyoming National Guard, and I'm here today on behalf of the Wyoming Military Department. As you have heard, this bill is really designed to make it easier originally for military spouses who may be coming from active duty commitments with their partner to live in the state, make it easier for them to get a permit to engage in the work of their profession. It's a temporary permit is the intent, so that they can begin the work and then go through the longer process of establishing that full license. This has been a tremendously beneficial program because those spouses often don't have a choice of where they live. And so it's been a recognition of their service. And also it's just helpful, I think, when the Department of Defense looks at states that are supportive of their military service members, this is one of those things that they look at when they're considering assignments and so on and missions. So we're grateful for these efforts because they directly impact our service members and their families. I would only offer one, additional thought. With the bill on page 3 in Romanet 5, there is a stipulation in there to provide a copy of military orders for military service in this state. That is certainly a noteworthy recommendation, and if the intent of the committee would be to limit the application of this statute to folks who are serving specifically within the state or their spouses are serving in the state, that makes sense. However, that would restrict perhaps somebody who is serving outside of the state, retires, and then chooses to come back. The way the order systems work is they wouldn't necessarily receive military orders to perform military service in the state. They would get a PCS order to return home to their home of record. And so it might unintentionally exclude folks from consideration for this statute. That's certainly at the committee's discretion as to what you would want to apply there, but I just wanted to point that out. Otherwise, I don't have any concerns with the bill from the military department's perspective, and I stand by for any questions.
Thank you. I see that point very well. Perhaps maybe you could get with the presenter of the bill and maybe we could have a committee of the whole amendment, because I don't know, we would need some language to tweak that.
I'd be happy to do that, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, Mayor Collins, please. Oh, I forgot to ask what, did you?
Yeah, way to go.
Did anybody have any questions?
Debbie had questions.
I left Karen off easy without questions. We can bring her back if we have questions. Mayor Collins, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Mayor Patrick Collins from the city of Cheyenne. I'm here today to speak in favor of Senate File 119. I'm an honorary commander. One of the best parts about being the mayor of Cheyenne is I get to be an honorary commander on the base. And my honorary command is the Mission Support Group on F.E. Warren Air Force Base. And we have military members who move to our base each year, and with them comes their spouses who have careers that required state-issued licenses. I keep hearing stories of military spouses who struggle to get a license to work in our state. They have the education, they pass the required testing in another state, they've practiced their profession for at least 2 years in another jurisdiction. In many of these cases, military spouses have been licensed in a number of states before being transferred to F.E. Warren Air Force Base. A few years ago, the legislature passed laws to give these military spouses an expedited path for licensure. They're typically here for 2, maybe 3 years, and the protracted licensure process denies them meaningful employment. This hurts the military spouse from contributing to the family budget and makes finding military members willing to transfer to our base a challenge. What I'm hearing from spouses is they appreciate the past efforts, but the reality is the law is not working. It takes too long to get licensed. Federal laws like the recently passed National Defense Authorization Act of 2025 includes a provision that requires states to issue a license similar in scope to the one they have in another state within 30 days of receiving a proper application. The Military Spouse Licensing Relief Act of 2021 sets a list of requirements to qualify for portability under federal law, and they include the relocation is due to military orders, requires a copy of those military orders, a current license that has been active at least 2 years prior to the relocation. They've had to remain in good standing with all licensure authorities. And then that applicant has to agree to submit to Wyoming's authority in the new jurisdiction. And we would suggest adding a copy of a marriage license or a married ID to prove that they are, in fact, a spouse. What is needed to improve the law, the past law, is a timeline for issuance of a license. And I think page 2, line 22, gives the agency 30 days to issue the license or a temporary permit. Page 3, starting in line 6, covers the requirements for the Military Spouses Licensing Relief Act. The other item that is challenging is some of our agencies don't have an online process. It makes it really hard for a military spouse when they get orders to transfer to F.E. Warren Air Force Base to apply before arriving in Wyoming. This delays the process, and page 4, lines 14 to 17 covers this requirement. 30% of Cheyenne's economy is made up by our military presence. The men and women who make decisions to serve and protect our country deserve the very best efforts we can to make their families feel welcomed and valued in our state. And I would encourage the support of this bill in our military families. And I brought with me today Colonel Brown, my honorary commander's wife, who is in fact struggling to get a license today. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Any questions for the mayor? Thank you, Mayor Collins. Appreciate it. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all for this opportunity to share my experiences and to watch this process.
Please introduce yourself.
Sorry, my name is Katie Brown. I am Colonel Kevin Brown's wife.
Thank you.
I've been an Air Force wife for 17 years, and in that time, we've moved 7 times. When we were first married, I had an Idaho State teacher's license. We moved to Colorado, and because we were only going to be there for a year and the transfer process was long, I opted to not transfer my license. That's a year I missed as a teacher. It's a year that Colorado missed having a professional in their state and in their schools. In 2011, I became a licensed professional counselor in the state of Idaho. I've been licensed in Florida and New Mexico as well, and I'm waiting on Wyoming currently. While I know that the federal government has done wonderful things to ease license portability for spouses, there does remain a gap between the letter of the law and the actual lived experiences of the spouses pursuing relicensure in our states because of military moves. The law says that we are able to get expedited licenses or temporary licenses, but unless that language is included in the rules and regs of the boards through whom we apply, it's a lame duck law. Florida remains the easiest state for me to have acquired my license. They have a clear Armed Forces licensing link on their board websites, which takes you to their own site where the points of the NDAA are clear. The process is 100% online. Fingerprinting is electronic. Fees are waived for military spouses. So once I applied, I had my license within 10 days. Because it was so simple, I was able to apply while still living in Virginia, which meant that as soon as we got to Florida, I could begin working. In contrast, Wyoming has been a struggle. It has been cumbersome, just like being a new grad and getting a new license for the first time. On their board website, there are 2 pathways for licensure, but they are essentially identical. There's no real difference. And there is no pathway for me as a military spouse to acquire an expedited or temporary license through the board. Add to that, the fees were more than double what I've paid in any other state, and those things become a deterrent for spouses who know that they're only going to be here for a few years, or for whom the finances are a burden. So therefore, I would ask that you pass this bill and the adjustments so that the military spouses can continue serving this great state, which has just demonstrated a really wonderful commitment to the troops and their families. If there's time, or with your permission, I do have letters from 2 other military spouses who were unable to be here. If, I don't know what the process is, if I
You
would.
certainly can have, you give them to our, yeah,
Okay.
frankly, I don't think there's gonna be any opposition to this bill.
Okay.
So, we'd be glad to take your letters, but, I would like to have them
Okay,
to read on our own, but we'll do it on our own time if we can just get copies.
certainly.
Pierre can make copies for the committee. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Brown?
Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Brown?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
you mentioned that the cost was higher in Wyoming.
It is.
This bill doesn't do anything to help with the cost, does
It
it?
doesn't.
No.
I imagine that would have to come from the boards. I know that their budget is largely dependent on the fees that they charge their licensees, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any further testimony? I actually didn't see the licensing board. Usually someone from the licensing board, the executive director, shows up, but I don't see him today. So, Mr. Winnie, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County, 30 years active duty in the Navy, plus 4 years at the U.S. Naval Academy. 19 moves in those 30 years. And my wife, who was with me all but 2 days of those 30 years, taught in a number of places. And I would remark that the PTSB process that she faced coming into Wyoming worked pretty well. So I have no issue there. But you might take a look at things like certification of medical personnel, professional engineers. The Navy has a corps of engineering duty-only officers who have to have a PE, and make sure that that is portable. We got things like welders. You know, the Navy has a corps of welders. They can weld upside down using a mirror and get it right the first time, and they turn out to be saleable. So if there's something that would get in their way, please remove it. I'd also like to illustrate the level of training that you actually get in the military. In my own experience, my initial training was a 1-year master's level program of nuclear power school, academic and hands-on training, and I later taught in that program. Then you have to take an engineer exam, direct equivalent of the PE. 8-hour written exam followed by a second day of oral interviews. And then later, as I went prepared to go to command, I had to go to a doctoral level prospective commanding officer course for nuclear power. None of those transfer directly in the civilian world, but that's the level of military training they get, that people get. So to the extent you can smooth the path of anybody coming in, that is worth it for Wyoming. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Questions for Mr. Winnie? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Any further testimony from the audience? We have no one online, correct, Pierre? Okay, so I'll close public testimony. Committee, what is your pleasure on this bill?
Move the bill.
Moved by Anderson, seconded by Cooper. Committee discussion on the bill?
What were those,
Changes?
changes he wanted done on page 5?
Yes, line 18, page 5. Somebody want to,
I would do it, but,
it changes the
It's-
two 26s to 36s,
oh, both of them.
both of them.
Oh, okay, I just marked the one.
So do I hear a motion?
That's a motion, I move
Okay.
to change that to 36.
Okay, it's been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Brennan. Any discussion on the change? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. That amendment has passed. Any further amendments, committee?
Mr. Chairman, on page 3, line 13, we're gonna have a committee of the whole to change that in this state. Is that correct?
I've asked the bringer of the chair to meet with Colonel Hinkle, and we'll see something cleaned up there.
Okay.
I have one.
Sure. Senator Brennan.
I have one question, because I'm not sure if I'm reading this right or reading it crazy. On page 3, starting at 18, where it says that there's pursuant to rules which shall be adopted for this purpose, a professional or occupational licensing board may issue a temporary practice permit. Are we saying that they have to have rules that they may, like, why is that a may instead of a shall?
I would imagine it would be a may, because if, you know, they have to apply, make the application, and if they don't provide the things that the application requires, I don't think they want to issue one. For instance, if they didn't provide, you know, an ID card to prove they were a spouse, or, I mean, there's probably a lot of ways that an application could be denied. It's not denied based on their practice, though, because that will have to come later, but Senator Boner, am I thinking right?
Yeah, I think so, Mr. Chairman, and maybe they have a different mechanism than a temporary permit too. Maybe they just have agree that, if maybe they already have a reciprocity agreement, that there's just other possibilities out there other than a temporary permit.
Yeah,
Thanks. I just want to make sure we didn't have a loophole.
okay, good, thank you for that. Any further other questions or comments or changes? Okay, hearing none, Pierre, can we have a roll call?
Senator Anderson,
Aye.
Senator Brennan,
Aye.
Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator Kolb,
Aye.
Chairman Pappas.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, that bill has passed the Senate Transportation. Thank you, Senator Boner. So now we're off to Senate Joint Resolution number 7. Senator Cooper, would you take this, because I'm going to present it. Should learn to go together.
Senate Joint Resolution Number 7, NCSL 50th Anniversary. Senator Pappas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good senators, you've seen this before. This is the exact same language that we signed last year in a informal resolution of the Senate. If you recall, Senator Driscoll, when he was president, created this resolution. We all signed it, and it was forwarded to NCSL. I've realized that most of the states have actually had their legislatures pass resolutions rather than doing an informal one that didn't go through the legislative process. And so they only got a Senate version of senators. So all this does is create the same language, but it's going to go through the houses and both houses, and it's going to become a resolution honoring NCSL's 50th anniversary. And as you know, we, as a member state of NCSL, belong to NCSL. We have for many years, and I'm just wanting to see this resolution go forward so that it passes both houses, it gets signed by the governor, and honors the the organization that we belong to. It's pretty simple, straightforward.
Thank you,
Subject to your
Senator.
questions.
Any questions for Senator Pappas?
Thank you.
Seeing none. Anybody in the room want to testify to this? Pierre, do you have anybody online? Okay, so we'll close public testimony. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Moved by Anderson, seconded by Pappas. Any discussion? Hearing none, I guess Pierre, we're ready for a roll call.
Senator Anderson,
Aye.
Senator Brennan,
Aye.
Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator Kolb,
Aye.
Chairman Pappas.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Thank you, committee. Okay, now we're to our third and final bill of the day. Senate File Number 141, United States Marine Corps Corporal Seth Rasmussen Memorial Highway. Fine bill from Senator Craigo. Please walk us through your bill.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Barry Crago, Senate District 22. Mr. Chairman, committee, today it's my distinct honor, privilege actually, to bring you Senate File 141, USMC Corporal Seth Rasmussen Memorial Highway. Mr. Chairman, this bill comes to me from the family of Seth Rasmussen, and it's a simple attempt to honor the memory of a fallen hero. Seth was a Wyoming native and grew up in Buffalo. At an early age, he decided he wanted to serve in the military and in particular the Marines. Seth graduated from high school early so he could get a jump start on his military career. 2 weeks after his 18th birthday, he joined the Marines. He originally committed to a 5-year stint so that he could eventually become a crew chief. After extensive training, including SEER school, Seth was assigned to a Marine medium tilt rotor squadron known as the Purple Foxes in Camp Pendleton, California. While there, Seth flew hundreds of hours of training missions. In 2021, Seth was deployed to the Middle East. He flew 59 combat missions in Africa, Yemen, Syria, and Iraq. During this time, Seth earned his combat wings. He also earned an additional 6 medals. After returning home from deployment, Seth began training new Marines to do the same thing he was doing. And during one of those training missions on June 8th, 2022, Seth lost his life when the V-22 Osprey tilt rotor aircraft he was on crashed in California. Seth left behind a wife, a 7-month-old son, as well as his parents and 4 brothers. Mr. Chairman, committee, it's humbling to sit here today to do one of these types of bills. It becomes personal, and you think about the sacrifice that people like Seth and others have made for us. Today, his family requests that we name a portion of Highway 16 heading west out of our town, Buffalo, heading up the mountain to the county line to honor his sacrifice. The family chose this section of highway because Seth loved the mountains. He loved hunting, he loved biking, he had lots of hobbies that took place in those mountains, and he grew up there. I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman, about it. It's a pretty simple bill. Obviously, there is the $3,000 appropriation in the bill to pay for the signs and have them put up. But I know one of his brothers is online. The remainder of his family is watching today, but I think it's pretty emotional for most of them. I know them very well. They're wonderful people, and hopefully we can honor Seth and his family today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Craigo. Committee, questions? Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, this sounds like it's 2 signs, so it'd be one on each side rather than one on the ends of the appropriate highway.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, so in talking to the department, I believe our plan was to, and they're here today, and the engineers, I think, can answer our questions, but originally when talking to the director and some of his staff, we would put 1 sign at each end. So 1 sign coming into the county and 1 as you leave town, just on the edge of Buffalo, as you head up the mountain there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Thank you, Senator Grego. I'd like to hear now from the department, and I'd actually like the committee to welcome our new chief engineer, Keith Fulton. Keith and I have been friends for a long time. We worked on an advisory board at the university together for a while. He just took over. Mark is retired, and so we have a new chief engineer, and I want to welcome you to our committee, welcome you to your new position, and introduce yourself to the rest of the board or committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Keith Fulton. I am the incoming chief engineer for the Wyoming Department of Transportation. Our current chief engineer is retiring, Mark Gillette is retiring after almost 45 years. And so his last day will be tomorrow. To answer, the senator did correctly answer that we would put a sign on each end, just one sign as you come into the county and leave the city. Two signs, depending on the size, we're still working on how sign would be, a couple posts, and then we would put them in and then we would maintain them.
I imagine it would pretty much like the other memorial highways we've done. So the signs would look similar, I would suspect.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, questions? Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, newly minted chief engineer. Good day to you. General question through the chair is, why don't we have some sort of rulemaking mechanism that allows WYDOT to accept private individuals from putting up signs or say a certain format, a standard that they could use that would represent their locality without going through this whole process, legislative process? Why don't we just do that? I mean, what's stopping us from you developing, I know you make rules for everything, that the localities could apply and go through a process for a standardized sign, which I'm sure this is going to be some standardized size sign, that we could do this just to take care of it, because this has come up a lot, here and there, and it's certainly a personal issue in a locality. So what are your thoughts on maybe having a process that we could work on to develop some sort of methodology to do that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, Senator Kolb, we've always taken this as a policy decision because these are very personal, and heart-wrenching things that people come and ask for these signs. And so there could be a lot of them once you open this up. And of course, we always want to limit how many signs we have on the highway. And you could get a lot. And so we've always taken this as a policy decision, bring it to the legislature to name highways. And then we'll put up the signs. That's how we've taken it. Now, other states can I've seen some other states do have procedures where the legislature has given the Department of Transportation or the commission the ability to do this. But at this point, we've always gone under this as a legislative policy decision.
Senator Kolb, I think it probably could, if we wanted to give that authority to the commission. We could, I would imagine.
Well, I guess the follow-up question, Mr. Chairman, would be,
Sure.
What size sign would this be? I mean, is this like 8 by 10, a 2 by 1? I mean, I think the size is probably obviously a big thing that we haven't yet discussed, but I don't know the exact size. So maybe you can help me with the size.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, in the past, we've had these as big as 8 feet wide by 4 foot tall. And so a lot of times it depends on the road and the speed. So the higher the speed of the highway, you'll need a bigger sign so people can read it. And so they have been pretty big signs.
Yeah, there is a size in the fiscal note that is, I imagine they had to provide that to get a number.
Chairman, would that be the size for all these type of?
I think as the good chief engineer said, it all depends on, if it's on the interstate, it's gonna be different than if it's on a road that's 55 miles an hour, so. Senator Craigo, can you add some more?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just following up on Senator Kolb's question, I mean, we did pursue that option first. I made that inquiry whether we could do it without taking up legislative time. The answer was no, and I think it was actually a wise answer. And simply because, in talking to the director, some of these get political, and they at least want public eyes on that. If we're going to name a highway around the state, one of our state highways, they want the public to know what's going on. And so I think that was one of their concerns. This one might not be so much, but some of the other ones, when you start naming them after something else or for some other purpose, I think there was a concern that the public should at least have the opportunity to chime in. And so that's why they keep directing us this way.
Okay, further questions? Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with this process. Lady Bird Johnson tried to clean up these signs that everybody could put up and did a pretty good job of getting it cleaned up in various highways. And I think they're all the same size, these memorial ones. This is the same size as we put on I-90, or I-25, excuse me, for Vietnam veterans. So I think they're all pretty much the same size. My question is, are we still printing that in-house? So that would be printed in-house?
Mr. Fulton.
Mr. Chair, Senator, yes, we can do these in-house.
Good, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, Bill, did you want to address us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I look forward to working with you in my new position.
Thank you. Thank you. We look forward to working with you as well.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Bill Novotny, Chairman of the Johnson County Board of Commissioners. I am here before you in full support of this very appropriate way to honor the loss of a very fine young man and allow his family to receive that additional honor. One of the hardest things that I had to do as a county commissioner was add Seth's name to our Veterans Memorial on the courthouse lawn. So I think this is a wholly appropriate way to designate a portion of 16. This is a portion of the highway that goes past the Wyoming Veterans Home up into the Bighorns. This is a wholly appropriate and honorable way to allow his legacy to live on. So I would ask you for your favorable consideration of this bill, and please move it forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Novotny? Thank you, Bill. I know we have two folks, no one else in the room, so I don't think there's any more public testimony here, but we do have two online. Okay, welcome, Mr. Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the Mr. Chairman, to the committee for having me this morning. My name is Blaine Rasmussen, and I'm the older brother of Corporal Seth Rasmussen. He was a proud son of Buffalo, Wyoming, and a dedicated United States Marine. I stand before you not only as his brother, but as someone who had the privilege of witnessing his unwavering commitment to his family, his country, and his community. Seth was more than a Marine. He was a son, a husband, a father, brother, and a friend to all who knew him. From an early age, he was drawn to the call of service, driven by a deep love for our country and the belief that true honor is found in sacrifice. He lived that belief every day, and ultimately he gave his life upholding the values that define our nation. US Highway 16, the route from Buffalo over the Bighorn Mountains, is a road that Seth traveled countless times. It represents his journey from a young boy chasing adventure in the Wyoming outdoors to the man who wore the Marine Corps uniform with pride. It is the road that leads home, the place he always carried in his heart, no matter where duty called him. He wasn't just a Marine, he was a warrior who answered the call of duty without hesitation. He deployed to the Middle East, where he saw combat and distinguished himself in service. As part of an Osprey unit, he played a critical role in transporting special operations forces, flying into dangerous situations where he encountered enemy fire more than once. His dedication and bravery earned him his combat wings, an honor that reflected his skill, determination, and willingness to place himself in harm's way to protect his fellow Marines and his country. But before he was a Marine, he was a Wyoming outdoorsman through and through. He spent countless days in the Bighorn Mountains hunting alongside our father, myself, and my brothers, forging bonds that only come from shared sunrises and hard-earned success. Hunting wasn't just a hobby for Seth, it was part of who he was. It was about family tradition and respect for the land, a tradition he hoped to share with his son, who was only 7 months old when my brother died. Sorry. when he, yeah, excuse me. Even when he found the love of his life at Avery, brought her into that world. One of their first dates was an elk hunt, and in true Seth fashion, was a successful one. That was just one of the many successful elk hunts that he had. He carried that same dedication, patience, and skill in the field in everything he did, including his service to our country. Renaming the stretch of highway in his honor would not only recognize Seth's sacrifice, but would serve as a lasting tribute to all the men and women from Wyoming who have given their lives in service to our nation. It would remind those who travel its path that freedom is not free, and that heroes like Seth come from towns just like Buffalo, built on faith, hard work, and community. Seth never sought recognition, but if he were here today, I know he would be humbled by the proposal, not for himself, but because he would see it as a way to honor all of his brothers and sisters in uniform. On behalf of my family and those who knew and loved Seth, I urge you to support the renaming of US Highway 16 as USMC Corporal Seth Rasmussen Memorial Highway. Let his name stand as a symbol of service and sacrifice so that future generations may know the story of a Wyoming boy who gave everything for his country. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Rasmussen. We appreciate your testimony. The entire committee sends our greatest sympathies for your loss and your family's loss. And we appreciate you testifying today in honor of your brother. So, committee, any questions for Blaine? Thank you, Mr. Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the committee.
We have one other that was signed up. Would you please let them in? Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, honorable members of the Transportation Committee. My name's Augie Wagner. I'm a proud native of Buffalo, Wyoming, and a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. I was also the best friend and neighbor of Corporal Seth Rasmussen. I stand before you today not only as Seth's friend, but as someone who witnessed firsthand his transformation from a young Wyoming boy into a proud, determined, and dedicated United States Marine. Seth was a man of great character, and I'm deeply honored to have known him and shared many life-changing experiences in the Bighorn Mountains, just off this stretch of Highway 16. Seth and I grew up just outside Buffalo, as I had mentioned. Our homes were shared front yards nestled at the base of the Bighorn Mountains. We spent a lot of time in those mountains. He was, from the beginning, I would describe him as a true mountain man with a connection to the land that ran deep in his soul. The memories we made together hunting elk, deer, predators, small game in those mountains, fishing, camping, a variety of things are more precious memories to me now than they ever were at the time. I often think about how I take for granted the childhood that we had outside of Buffalo in those mountains, but Seth never did. He was immensely proud to have been raised in Buffalo, in Wyoming, and in those Bighorn Mountains. And all three of those things, the community, the mountains, his family, his friends, they shaped him into the man he became. Seth's commitment to his state and country was unwavering. He served with the utmost dignity, both as a Marine, as a devoted husband, father, son, and brother. At the age of 17, Seth and I both made the decision to graduate high school early. We graduated at the end of the first semester of our senior year, and we both enlisted in the Marine Corps. Seth and I went our separate ways after boot camp, shortly after we turned 18. My journey took me to Monterey, California, to the Defense Language Institute, and his took him to Pensacola and North Carolina. We kept in touch. We were very close friends, I would say even brothers, from basically the day we met in third grade when I moved to Buffalo. In 2021, Seth was deployed to the Middle East to the Central Command under a special purpose MAGTF, Marine Air Ground Task Force. Over there, he earned his combat wings, flew countless combat hours. When he returned, I had been cut orders from Headquarters Marine Corps to Camp Pendleton, California. And I had the blessing of spending the last 8 years, can you hear me? 8 months with Seth before he passed. So much had changed in our lives. Seth was now a husband to Avery, also a Buffalo native, and a father to a newborn son, Reed, who was born in October of 2021. We both continued to miss Wyoming deeply. We often talked about how fortunate we were to have grown up in such a beautiful place, and we dreamt about returning once our service was complete. The more time Seth spent in California, the more he missed home. It is with great respect and admiration I stand before you today to strongly advocate for the renaming of the stretch of this highway in Johnson County outside of Buffalo in memory of Corporal Seth Rasmussen. Although Seth was never one to seek recognition, I know that he would be deeply honored to represent the many men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation. Renaming this highway would offer an exceptional tribute to Seth's legacy and would symbolize what it means to be a kid from Wyoming, someone who served with dedication, love for his family and community, and a deep pride in his roots. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Questions for Mr. Wagner? Mr. Wagner, we appreciate your testimony and we thank you for your service as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Okay, so that is our last testimony. So I'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Moved by Anderson,
Second.
seconded by Cooper. Any discussion on the bill?
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to be a no vote on this, and I'd like to explain why. It isn't because of any lack of sympathy or condolence or appreciation of Corporal Seth Rasmussen's service to our country. It's the fact that we're going to run out of highways. We're going to run out of roads. We name everything. I can name a lot of people, and I won't bring them up because we're talking about Seth's service today, and I won't just, take away from that. But there are a lot of other people that died in the conflict that I could start naming, which are, I could make equal arguments to. I think I would be an apt to always support a class, a group, Vietnam vets, Korean vets, Afghanistan vets of the war, Iraq. Those are broad groups of people. But when we start drilling down to a single individual, and I know it's very personal, and I could have just done, frankly, the easy thing and just went along with this, but I've never gone along with naming highways for a particular person, not for, Senator Coe or anyone else, for those reasons. So I just like the chance to explain it. I have the utmost respect. My children have served, and my whole family, lacking myself, have served. And I just want to try to explain that. And I don't know if I did a very good job, Mr. Chairman, but I hope people understand. And if you don't, you can always talk to me. But thank you for the chance to explain my vote.
Thank you, Senator Kolb. I do understand personally, so. Okay, any further comment? Seeing none, let's take a roll call.
Senator Anderson,
Aye.
Senator Brennan,
Aye.
Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator Kolb,
No.
Chairman Pappas.
Aye.
4 ayes, 1 no.
Thank you. That wraps up our business today. Committee, just for your knowledge, we do have 2 bills that have been forwarded to us from the House, 2 House bills. So we'll probably be seeing those. They've been sent for introduction. They haven't been sent to our committee yet, but I would imagine that they would be there. We would hear about them. So plan on 2 House bills next Tuesday. Okay. And also there was an email sent to you about committee interim dates. Would you please look at those and get to me? I think we're going to need to change the August date for Senator Kolb because he's conflicting with judiciary. But if the rest of you would also tell me if the dates are fine with you, I'd like to get those set. Okay.
Mr. President, or Mr. Chairman, are you gonna have Craig go present that on the 4th?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, it's his bill, so. Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Yeah. Good to see you, Keith.
Thanks, Barry.
Thanks for being here.